You are tuned in to the LowBand Show, broadcasting from the storm drains under the big city, where a tunnel crew runs this booth on salvaged gear, pipes humming, steady water dripping, piping surface science and tech news on a low-band signal through the drains. I'm your host, Max Hertz. Welcome in. Here's what we do. We take real science and tech news from the surface, summarize it, then go deeper to educate, entertain, and shed light on what's in store for our collective future. News from the net, clear signal, and a little tunnel. If you came for hype, you took a wrong turn at the storm drain.
Welcome in. Glad to have you with us today. Wiz, good to have you in the booth.
Glad to be here, Max. Let's see what we've got.
Today, we're looking at how surveillance and algorithmic control are creeping into everyday life. First, we have a look at how automated license plate cameras wrongly tracked a journalist, leading to his arrest, and then a new facial recognition push in UK retail shops. We also check in on hacked smart doorbells being used to spy on military bases, followed by Europe telling Meta to turn off infinite scroll, and a massive multi-trillion-dollar youth safety trial in the US. A lot of ground to cover. Let's get into it. This story caught my eye because of how a tiny typo became an automated nationwide dragnet. The Drive reported on July 8, 2026, that a data error triggered an armed police stop. Wiz, the author writes, 4 cop cars came flying out of nowhere and boxed us in.
Terrifying. Imagine returning an Amazon package and suddenly looking down the barrels of police sidearms. The real kicker is the source of the error. This wasn't some sophisticated criminal cloning plates. It was pure database friction.
The author explains the error. The New Jersey plates were 3403 DTM, but when the police report was created, it was just recorded as 34 DTM. Wiz, for listeners who may not know, what is DTM on these plates?
It stands for Dealer Temporary Maker, a common lettering suffix New Jersey uses for manufacturer-owned test cars. Because LAPD entered it as a standard 5-character plate, Flock's system treated the 03 as invisible noise, turning every car in that media fleet into a rolling felony stop.
Exactly. The scale of this glitch is wild. The author writes, anywhere a police department has a partnership with Flock, any other JLR-owned car with the same plate structure is going to get flagged as stolen. Wiz, they were tracking 4 other cars that same week.
Which means 4 other completely innocent drivers were driving around Minnesota as ticking time bombs. It's a classic system design failure. They took a localized manual inventory mistake and broadcasted it nationwide through an automated camera network with zero validation.
The irony is even deeper. The author notes the plate wasn't even stolen. It was reported misplaced during a Los Angeles photo shoot. And even then, the plate was reported as NJ34DTM instead of NJ3403DTM.
So the LAPD logged a misplaced plate as stolen, butchered the plate number, and Flock's AI automatically distributed that garbage data to police cruisers across the country. It's security theater built on top of a game of telephone.
Whether LAPD and Flock can prevent this specific database collision from happening again remains to be seen. We'll keep tracking this story. Up next, we're diving into the latest consumer privacy updates. This next story gets right to the friction point between retail security and public surveillance. The Guardian reported on July 10th, 2026, that facial recognition in UK shops will soon instantly alert police to the presence of serious offenders. It's a massive shift. Wiz, what's your first reaction to this?
It's a privatized pre-crime dragnet. We're outsourcing police dispatch to an automated system that flags people for what they might do. That is a massive leap from standard shoplifting deterrence.
Let's look at who is running this. The article states, FaceWatch, a facial recognition system used by more than 100 businesses, including Sainsbury's, B&M, and Spar, to monitor thieves, said it was launching a UK-first feature to alert police instantly when the most serious offenders trigger a match.
And they claim it alerts police in an average of 4 seconds. That is faster than checking out a carton of milk, turning private store security into an automated trigger finger for the state.
Wiz, for listeners who may not know, what exactly is FaceWatch?
It's a private company compiling database blacklists of suspected shoplifters. Retailers upload photos and cameras scan every customer to find matches. It's crowdsourced corporate surveillance.
Civil liberties advocate Charlie Welton raised a major concern, stating the idea of calling the police on somebody who hasn't committed a crime, but there's a concern they might, is really upending the way we do things.
Exactly. It upends the presumption of innocence. You haven't stolen anything today, but because a private database flagged you, police might show up. That shifts the burden of proof to the shopper.
The margin for error is a real issue. The article points out, these systems do make mistakes. A number of people have been forced to leave shops after being falsely identified.
Being kicked out of a supermarket is bad enough. Adding an instant police response to that algorithmic error turns a private embarrassment into a potential arrest. The stakes are incredibly high.
Sainsbury's plans to expand use from 55 stores to more than 200 by year's end. And FaceWatch reported alerting retailers nearly 300,000 times in the first half of 2026.
Scaling up a private blacklist system means scanning millions of faces daily without explicit consent. It's normalizing massive surveillance under the guise of shrink prevention.
Whether this integration of private blacklists and public policing will survive legal challenges remains to be seen. Up next, we're shifting gears to the latest in green energy tech. The battle here is really about the security of physical supply lines. The Telegraph reported on July 10, 2026, that Dutch intelligence warned Russian hackers are hijacking doorbell cameras. They've targeted routes, noting organizations with IP cameras on these routes have now been warned so that they could take action.
This is the classic Internet of Things failure mode. We install cheap, unmanaged cameras on our walls, point them at critical infrastructure, and then act surprised when a state-sponsored threat actor scans for open ports and logs right in.
The investigation points to the Dutch agencies, the AIVD and the MIVD. For listeners who don't know, what are these organizations?
The AIVD is the Dutch Domestic Security Agency, and the MIVD is their military intelligence counterpart. They're essentially coordinating here because this scanning threat bridges civilian property and military transport logistics.
Let's look at how they are getting in. The agencies report that many cameras often have standard passwords, outdated firmware, and standard configurations. Why do these default settings remain such a persistent blind spot?
Because convenience always wins in the consumer market. Manufacturers want a seamless plug-and-play experience out of the box, which usually means shipping hardware with a shared public default password that users almost never bother to change.
But the tactical payoff is disproportionately large. The report explains ground-based cameras offer a unique perspective on the terrain, which isn't the case with conventional aerial-based spy kit. How does a doorbell view compare to a multi-billion-dollar spy satellite?
Satellites are limited by orbital schedules and heavy cloud cover, and drones get shot down. A compromised front porch camera is cheap, persistent, and offers real-time horizontal tracking of military shipments without launching a single rocket.
How long this security gap will remain open is still unknown. Up next, we're diving into a new development in secure edge hardware.
The regulatory pressure here sounds almost unprecedented. So let's look at what the regulators are actually demanding. Ours reports on July 10th, 2026, that the European Commission is targeting Meta over addictive design, warning of massive fines unless they turn off features like Autoplay and infinite scroll. This targets the very engine of social media engagement.
It absolutely does. If you take away the endless scroll and autoplay, you're basically asking these platforms to stop being slot machines. Of course they're going to fight this tooth and nail because their entire business model relies on keeping eyes glued to the screen.
To understand their case, the report notes Meta did not adequately assess the risks of its addictive design on the physical and mental well-being of users, including minors and vulnerable adults. Wiz, for listeners who may not know, what is the European Commission's role in this?
They're essentially the executive arm of the European Union, acting as the chief regulator enforcing digital laws. They have the teeth to impose catastrophic fines if they decide a platform's design is actively exploitative, and they've got Meta dead in their sights.
Meta's spokesperson, Ben Walters, told Reuters that they disagree, stating, "Since this investigation began, we rolled out teen accounts that automatically protect teens and put parents in control, but the regulators aren't buying it." Wiz, what's your take on that defense?
It's a classic deflect and minimize strategy. Slapping a few parental control knobs onto a system designed from the ground up to bypass conscious willpower is like putting speed bumps on a roller coaster and calling it safe. The design itself remains addictive.
The financial stakes are incredibly high. The report notes, if Meta fails to make changes to comply with the EU's Digital Services Act, the company risks fines up to 6% of its global annual turnover. Wiz, how devastating would a 6% global fine actually be for Meta?
It's billions of dollars, enough to seriously bruise their balance sheet and panic their investors. More importantly, it sets a global precedent that could force them to re-engineer their apps worldwide, not just in Europe. The business model of manufactured dopamine is under direct threat.
The pressure isn't just coming from Europe. The report notes, the company faces a lawsuit from 29 states that claim Meta's platforms addict kids, and states may seek up to $1.4 trillion in penalties. Wiz, how does the U.S. legal battle compare to the EU's approach?
The U.S. is aiming for retrospective punishment and eye-watering damages, while the EU is trying to force systemic design changes by default. If both hammers fall at once, Meta is going to have a very long, very expensive autumn.
Whether these regulatory threats will actually force Meta to dismantle its core engagement loop remains to be seen. It's still unknown how the courts will rule. Up next, we're shifting to the latest updates in database security. This legal battle's price tag is hard to fathom. Reuters reported on July 7th, 2026, that 4 states seek $1.4 trillion from Meta over youth safety. Wiz, it is an astronomical figure.
An astronomical figure is right. That is close to Meta's entire market cap. They wanted a penalty, but they wrote down a ransom.
Here is what Meta wrote in its court filing. A sanction of that size has no analog in the history of consumer protection enforcement. The plaintiff's outlandish calculations have no basis in fact or law.
They are not wrong about the history. No consumer case has ever touched this. But calling it outlandish is also a defensive posture when you are facing an August trial.
The state's case is moving forward. The report notes, last month, Rogers rejected Meta's bid to cancel the trial, saying there remained factual disputes over whether its social media platforms were addictive. Wiz, for listeners who don't know, why is Oakland a critical venue for this?
It is the federal court for the Northern District of California, the primary battleground for Silicon Valley tech litigation. Facing a local jury pool in the industry's own backyard under an experienced judge is a high-stakes arena for Meta.
Meta's core defense is also on the record now. The article notes, Meta has denied the allegations, saying the attorneys general have no evidence it misled consumers about its platform's alleged addictiveness because social media addiction is not an established psychiatric condition.
The classic semantic escape hatch. If the psychiatric manuals do not officially code it, it legally does not exist. Bold strategy, but telling parents on a jury that screen addiction is a myth is a tough sell.
Whether this defense will hold up in front of a jury is still unknown. Up next, we're tracking a critical shift in global supply chains. And that wraps up our lineup for today. We started with the automated surveillance net, looking at how a single database typo in a flock camera system led to the wrongful tracking and arrest of a journalist, and how UK retailers are linking private facial recognition blacklists directly to public police alerts. We also saw how the physical security perimeter is shifting, with Russia leveraging hacked consumer doorbell cameras to monitor NATO ground troop movements, a low-cost tactical view that even multi-billion-dollar spy satellites can't replicate. Then we looked at the regulatory clampdown on Meta, from the European Union's ultimatum over autoplay and infinite scroll to the massive youth safety lawsuit in the US, where the company is defending itself by questioning the very medical definition of social media addiction. The common thread is clear. The systems built to connect and protect us are constantly being leveraged, bent, or miscalibrated in ways we're only beginning to govern. We have more stories and telemetry lined up for our next session, so keep your filters clean and your skepticism sharp.
It's certainly a lot to consider. If we missed an angle or you have further questions on these topics, please drop us a comment. We read them down here in the tunnel. And if this signal helped you stay informed, a like or subscribe keeps the pipes humming. More surface news and deeper dives are coming through the grate soon. Until then, stay curious, and we'll catch you next time on the Low Band Show.